Hello, everyone, and welcome to Western Connecticut SCORE's webinar on Impact of AI on Cybersecurity. I'm Bud Freund, the webinar coordinator and a business mentor here at Western Connecticut SCORE, and I'll be your host. Our speaker today is Vinny LaRocca. More on our speaker in just a minute, but first, some brief information on SCORE. There are about 10,000 SCORE volunteers nationally, and they are located in about 200 chapters nationwide. SCORE is an SBA resource partner. Western Connecticut SCORE has about 130 mentors with a wide range of industry, process, and subject matter expertise. We offer three primary value-added services to small business owners. First, free one-on-one counseling, face-to-face, telephone, email, video. We'll connect with you, which can be accessed via the Request Mentor link on our website or via the link that should be on the screen. Second, we provide educational in-person workshops and live webinars like this, and we do about 100 per year. And third, we have extensive resources on our website, including a network of subject matter experts at your disposal and a ridiculous number of documents. Some useful information about today's event. If you have a question, please use the chat window at any time during the presentation. It's located in the lower part of the screen, and we'll be making time for that at the end. And our workshop will end at 1 p.m. promptly to respect your time. The session is being recorded, and the link to the recording will be available at westernconnecticut.score.org within the next couple of days. Now, our speaker, Vinny LaRocca, is CEO of Cybersecurity with over 30 years of data security experience. Cybersecurity is a CMMC-AB RPO and ISO 27001 certified organization that provides cybersecurity operations, services, and risk management consulting. It is one of the world's fastest growing cybersecurity practices. And with that, I'll turn it over to Vinny. It's all yours.
Thank you, Bud. Greatly appreciated. Good afternoon, everybody. So yeah, as Bud just mentioned, today we're going to talk about AI, cybersecurity, and governance around AI. As Bud mentioned, this is one of the fastest growing concerns in the cybersecurity world. For the purposes of today, we're going to focus specifically on two types of AI. I just wanted to go over that quickly so we're all on the same page. The two forms of AI that we're going to refer to are first generative. And for those of you that deal with your Claude and your Copilot, that's a generative type of AI, which focuses on creating content. The second one is agentic, and that's more of an autonomous decision-making AI. And we see more of that today in the manufacturing industry, for example. But some of that, what we're going to talk to, will apply to both of those types of AI. So kicking us off, I want to start with some misconceptions. When I deal with businesses and executives, these are some of the things that seem to come up all the time. Some are not necessarily true, some are, so I want to go over those quickly. First thing is always seems to be that cybersecurity has to be expensive, and that really is not true. We're going to get into that a little bit more within this presentation, but there are a lot of things that a business owner can do himself that do not take a lot of time and or cost to put in place. For example, one of the number one things that we see that causes breaches with businesses is lack of patching applications and software. So even if you're a single user business and you've got Microsoft Office on your desktop, to make sure that you're consistently patching that is one of the greatest things you could do to secure your environment. And there's really no cost to that at all. Second one is it won't happen to me, especially from small businesses. When we deal with organizations that are getting attacked, hitting with ransomware, it's almost always somebody that said, I'm surprised, I didn't think they would want my data. And in this day and age, it's really not a threat actor wanting your data. It's about them keeping the data from you. Everybody's got data that's of value to them. That's how you run your business. It could be your accounting software, for example. If a threat actor was able to infiltrate your laptop and freeze that and lock up that data, if you were unable to identify who owed you money or who was your next transaction, who was your next shipment going out to, that could be critical to your business. So everybody's got data that's valuable to them, and these threat actors know it. So that ties right into number three. Nobody wants my data. For the most part, that's true. They just want to keep your data from you. Compliance and security are the same. That's really not true. So compliance is what we call the minimum of what you should be doing when it comes to security. It's what some governing agency said you're required to do. So to be compliant means you're probably doing the minimum. And I'm in the cloud, so I'm protected. The cloud is just another platform for where your data lives. Your data can live on your desktop, your laptop. It could live in your own private server on-prem, or it could be in the cloud. All of that is on you to put those protections in place. Those are not to being in the cloud. All right. The AI reality. So jumping right into it. Is AI an advantage? I mean, it is definitely an advantage to businesses today. We're seeing more and more businesses that are coming online with AI and are starting to be concerned about how to secure it. So 40%, 47% of all businesses are already, this is in the United States, 40% of all businesses in the United States are currently already using some form of AI. 72% of all businesses not currently using it are investigating it. And why is that? Because most people know that it is a competitive advantage, right? It makes you more efficient. Your speed to productivity becomes, way more efficient. You're lower cost to compete. In some cases, you could potentially be removing resources. What we've seen a lot with AI is this reduction of SaaS software, developing our own software, which puts a lot of cost savings in place. Decision making is obviously a lot faster, especially if we start talking about agentic and innovation, right? Ideas now are sparking up not only because we can create software with this AI, but just the ideas that it's coming from. You probably see more and more small businesses pop up left and right because of it. So it definitely is a competitive advantage. And we're going to see that, it's an advantage if used correctly. And you're also going to see most companies are starting to advertise that they use AI, which what I've seen can be a positive and negative. It's great if you're using AI and it's making your product or your services better to your client, but we've got to make sure that we're protecting it or it becomes a detriment. So I started talking about who's already using it. Mostly in these type of accounts, you'll see that they're ahead of most of us. Manufacturing is ahead of the game when it comes to, ahead of the game when it comes to AI. Finance is using a lot of it, especially in that removal of SaaS platforms, software development. Even in the legal space, you're probably going to see less and less paralegals in the future being needed because of what AI is able to do. So more and more companies are starting to figure out today, how do I use AI? What's my return on my investment? And I can tell you that that is probably the most important thing before implementing AI is knowing how you're going to use it, how to deploy it, how you're going to protect it. And when I say protect it, we're really talking more about protecting your data. Shadow AI is the new shadow IT. I'm not sure if everybody knows what shadow IT was, so I'll kind of go over that quickly. Shadow IT is that kind of IT in your infrastructure that you might not be aware of. you've got a user, for example, that's got a laptop and they've got software on there that you weren't aware of that wasn't even necessarily approved. Well, that's happening now a lot with AI. Businesses are seeing employees that are potentially using Copilot or Claude, and that they weren't aware of it. There was no AI usage policy in place, and because of that, it's not necessarily protected, and that's real important. So, if you've got users using AI that you're not aware of, they're probably scraping data from areas you're not aware of. So access management is one of the biggest concerns with small to mid-sized businesses that are using AI. So as we mentioned when we start talking about generative AI doesn't create data, it creates content. So when it creates that content, the concern is where is it getting the data from? And if you're not controlling that, it can be scraping data from anywhere, from the internet, from your your infrastructure. So hang on one second, guys. I apologize. I'm being told that you guys are having trouble seeing my screen. I do have this on full screen, so I'm not sure why that would be. Um, I'm on full screen, so I'm not sure what the problem is here. Oh, we can see. Okay. All right. All right. So it must be some people are having trouble, some people aren't. So I apologize. Um, so getting back to where we were, the shadow IT. So knowing who is using the AI in your environment is critical, and knowing where they're getting the data from is critical. One of the number one things that we recommend for all businesses is an AI usage policy, which is basically a policy to all your employees telling them what they're allowed to use, how they're allowed to use it, and where they're allowed to access data. So if you've got a file server in your environment that is open, there's no data access management in place, and you've got employees that are able to see not only the data that they need to see, but HR information or confidential information, that is now going to become available to AI. And that has gotten a lot of businesses in trouble. Um, when that confidential information goes out the door, you're potentially in breach of data privacy laws and some of these new AI usage laws that are out there. In case everybody's not aware, I'll just kind of go over that quickly. Currently, there's 47 countries that have AI litigation in place. AI introduced specific laws and regulations. 12 of those countries actually have enforcement mechanisms in place. The United States alone has 131 state AI laws in place today, and there's over 1,200 bills that have been introduced. So what does that mean? That means if there's a breach of data from your usage of AI, you are going to be responsible for that. So it goes back to, once again, what we started talking about, making sure that you've got control of the access that AI has to your data. And if you don't, well, what could you potentially lose? I mean, you could potentially lose everything, right? Your legal documents, your confidential information, your proprietary information. And then what we're really concerned about with all these data privacy laws today is PII, which is personal identifiable information. So that's, if you happen to keep copies of license, driver's license or social security numbers, any of those records that are identifiable to a specific person, personal health information, if you're in the health industry, personal credit information, PCI. If you lose any of that data, you're potentially in breach of data privacy laws. And once again, could get yourself in a lot of trouble. We also we want our clients to make sure today that if you've got a cybersecurity policy, make sure you've got an AI rider in place. Now, that's something that's fairly new. So if you've been renewing a cyber policy over the last 3 or 4 years, you might want to look into that. Make sure you're covered if there's an AI data breach. So security risks, and we've kind of touched on some of these, but so when we talk about the risk, we look at it from two different perspectives. The risk of how these threat actors today are using AI to breach our businesses. So they're weaponizing it. And just as we've said, AI can make our business more efficient, the work that we do more efficient. Well, it makes the work that the threat actor more efficient. What they're able to do today now is automate these attacks, where in the past, most attacks were targeted. They were looking at a specific industry. Now these threat actors create these attacks that go after IP addresses. So it's just a matter of them automating a attack against an IP. If they're able to find a vulnerability and get in, they're able to do this against a large number of businesses at one time. And that's why when we go back to, is it only happening to businesses? It's not. If they'll attack any business they can. Once they've gotten in, they've got your data, then they'll figure out what that value is to you. And they're willing to take $5,000, $10,000 because it didn't take them any time to get into your account. But it's happening more and more. The other thing that the threat actors are doing is using your own AI against you. If you don't have the controls in place preventing threat actors from getting in your environment, they're getting in and using your own AI to copy some of the work that you're doing and sending it out to them. So my business recently dealt with an organization that at the same time had a breach of their environment. Their email environment got hijacked, and then they used AI to copy the documents based on specific information they were looking at and transferring it out to them. So I mean, these guys they're very sophisticated. They're way ahead of us when it comes to AI. And the reason they're way ahead of us is when you think about it, we're using AI and most of us are trying to make sure that we're doing it the right way. We're compliant. The threat actors aren't worried about, being compliant and breaking laws. So they're way ahead of the game when it comes to using AI as a threat. Overconfidence. So this is something I'm dealing with every day. Businesses that are starting to use AI and they're accepting the output of AI as a deliverable. You might have seen a couple of these things in the story recently. Deloitte got themselves in trouble. They got hired by a country. It was the government of Australia hired Deloitte to create a report based on some information that they were looking for. It was a $440 million deal, I believe, off the top of my head. Deloitte used AI to create the document. Nobody on Deloitte's side checked it. It went over to the client who was able to find that this was AI created and it was not accurate. Deloitte had to refund 290 of that $1 million. Not to mention that it's a real big black eye for someone like Deloitte. And then another one recently in the news was the car rental company that was using AI to govern their rental agreements and the pickups. And there was an error with the access to it, and AI decided on its own the best way to secure that or to remediate that was to delete the database. So that car rental company was without their database for, I think it was close to a week, lost millions of dollars. People were coming to pick up their rental and there was no record of it in place. So, the usage of AI can be great for us, but the control of it is very important. As I said, access management, knowing where you're getting that data from, who's asking for that data is important. Putting controls around it so that you know that it's secure and you know that it's the right data that is being used is critically important. All right, so this happens a little bit more in the larger organizations, but when we start talking about things like hallucination and bias, once again, this goes back to the data that AI is using to create the content you're looking for. So if you're pulling data that has biases in them originally, that is going to come out in the data that's being created by AI. And hallucinations is once again um, something that AI is basically exaggerating on, right? It does have the ability to do that, especially if it's getting more and more content in one direction that might not necessarily be accurate. So I can't, emphasize enough that the data that you're using for AI has to be accurate. Otherwise, you're going to get inaccurate information. Okay. This is a very important slide. For any business that's currently using AI or thinking about AI, these are some of the things that should be first. Well, as I mentioned before, first thing you should have is an AI usage policy. How is the business allowing AI to be used and by who? So when, in any case, when somebody's using AI to create a deliverable, it's always important to know who approved that workflow, meaning who approved the ability to use a specific type of AI, whether that's Claude, Copilot, who allowed it to scrape data from a confidential file, who let it be sent to a client without it being reviewed. Very important that someone in the business, and even if you're a sole proprietor, well, then you're the one that's responsible. And the reason I say responsible, because in the event that there was ever a breach or a loss of data, there's no longer the ability to say, I didn't do it, it was AI. That's not acceptable, right? That's why these AI laws are now being put in place. You created that using AI, you're responsible for it. Second one is, once again, what systems and data can it access? As I said, that's really up to the business. Those controls have to be put in place day one. And they don't have to be expensive. Most businesses already have some access management in place. Um, some of it's inherent through Microsoft, some of it's inherent through your file server. But restricting data based on usage is critical. And so what decisions can it influence? It can influence just about anything. As AI gets more and more sophisticated, it has the ability to do more and more, influence more and more, change more and more. And that's critical. As we just talked about, we've seen a number of different incidents over the last 6 to 12 months where AI made a decision that wasn't necessarily in alignment with the business owner. It was based on what it believed. So important where it's getting that influence from. Audit trails, another thing that's a big concern in small to medium-sized businesses is audit trails. So, and what we say by audit trail, if you were breached and you lost data, how would you know? How would you know if you had data exfiltration today? Threat actor gets into your environment, copies a couple of terabytes of critical data, sends it off to his site. If you don't have logging, you would not know that. Now, some of these systems that we talked about have some logging already in place. Usually it's pretty minimal. You'd have to, update your data storage to get more and more of it. There's also solutions like DLP can get a little bit more expensive. But not having any sort of logging can get you in a lot of trouble. If there were a data breach, and we'll just talk about some of the local ones like Connecticut, for example, these data privacy laws. If you were found guilty of a data breach where your information was lost, and you don't have any logging to prove otherwise, you're going to be found guilty, right? You're going to be responsible because you can't prove otherwise. So I would tell every small business owner to look into what you have in place today as far as logging. If I had an issue, how would I know I did? So the financial risk. And we've touched on a little bit of this already. The hallucinations, the biases, that type of thing. If you're sending out that kind of information and it's incorrect, that could be just a trust issue with you and your clients. But loss of clients because of that false output, as we saw with the Deloitte issue, that could be a loss of millions. It's a loss to your brand, right? The impact to your brand, but for something like that is there's no way to put a dollar amount out on it. Hopefully, as we talked about, if your insurance does cover the AI, some of this would be covered. But otherwise, I mean, we've seen businesses go under because of this. Um, so, when you start talking about the upfront capital to make sure that you're secure and compliant, I've had this conversation with a number of business owners almost daily. You put a cost to being secure and compliant. What is the cost of not being secure and compliant? And there a number of things come into place. As we just talked about, if you were breached and you were not secure and compliant, if you were not meeting the minimal impacts, you could be held responsible. If you're a financial institution in the state of New York, there's things called the New York DFS 500, which is a minimal set of requirements you're supposed to have in place for security. If those things were not in place and you were breached, not only could you be fined $65,000, but there's lawsuits potentially by those clients for the data that was lost. Another one, it's a big growing trend, and I'm seeing more and more of this, which is why I say think about the cost of not being compliant. The compliance on security is almost more and more governed today by third-party organizations. So, giving you an example, we actually just got hired by a large biopharma company, and they hired us to vet out their supply chain to make sure that they're meeting minimal requirements for their security. And if they don't, they no longer do business with that entity. We had another organization recently. They had an opportunity. It was a small law firm, local, had an opportunity with McDonald's to represent them in a case, but McDonald's required them to be GDPR compliant. It's basically a European version of security, and they weren't. They came to us and become GDPR compliant, but they needed it done within the 2 weeks, which is just not possible. So they lost a multi-million-dollar deal by not being proactive. So there's weights and measures and ROIs against putting these things in place. Organizations like my own, I'm ISO 27001. So my supply chain, when I go to my insurance provider, they need to meet certain requirements or I can't do business with them. So making the investment in security, whether it's on AI or just security in general, it's a differentiator. It's what can not only keep you in business, it's what can get you and bring you business today. So actions to take now. And these are, we talked about earlier on, things don't have to be expensive, and they don't. It really comes down a lot to awareness. So we say create an inventory, know what tools you're actually using. Very few small to mid-sized organizations do an asset management system where they're cataloging their tools, what tools they're using, who's using those tools, and what data those tools have access to. So, we kind of when we come in and look at talking about an inventory, we classification. Do you know what kind of data you're dealing with and storing on a day-to-day basis? Do you use PHI, PCI, PII? Are you storing any of that information locally or in the cloud? Are you responsible for it? If you have that data, do you know who's got access to that data? And more critically, do you know where that data lives? Is it on some employee's local laptop where if he lost that laptop in transit, now that's potentially lost data and you're responsible for it? So create an inventory of your not only your tools, but the access that those tools have and who uses them. Ownership. Like I think I mentioned this before, even if you've got a single employee, who's responsible for the usage? In this case, we're talking about AI, those workflows. Who's responsible for determining, can we use AI, what AI we can use, what data it can use? Protect IP and sensitive data. Well, so that goes hand in hand. So everybody's got sort of IP or sensitive data. Just having I-9s alone, which everybody's required to have, you've got this kind of sensitive data somewhere. right? So how are you protecting that data? Going back to, if you don't know where it lives, how can you protect it? And if you do know where you're protecting it, do you've got good disaster recovery and data backups in place? All right. So I've dealt with organizations where probably one of their biggest concerns, whether it's a breach or ransomware, for example, their data got encrypted. So they thought they had some sort of backup. They hadn't tested a backup in God knows how long, only to find out that the data they were looking for no longer exists. So now you're at the mercy of a threat actor who's going to, ask for ransomware because you need that data back, and he's got it. So protecting that data on top of knowing where it is very, very important. Zero trust to AI. So zero trust is pretty new in the industry when we start talking about IT. It's been around for a year or two, but it's really getting a little bit more sophisticated. And I think you're going to see more and more of this in the future. And the zero trust model is really that, where you're not just allowing anybody access or communication ability to you. You're limiting it to those that you know, whether that's by an IP address or a MAC address. There's different ways of doing it, but you're really only allowing determined specific agents to have access. And that gets a little bit more in depth, but it is something that we're seeing more and more of. And prepare for scrutiny, right? So I always tell my clients, always prepare for the worst, right? Hopefully it never happens, but in the United States, not sure if you're aware of this, a business gets attacked in the United States every 17 seconds. A breach happens in the United States every 26 minutes. So think about that. When everybody says it's not going to happen to me, it won't happen to me, chances are it's going to happen to you. And there's different forms of a breach. Some are worse than others. But if you're prepared for it, assuming you make the assumption it's going to happen to you, you're going to be better off in the end. Once again, we're talking about keeping these things within range, keeping these costs down. There's models out there, proactive IR models, where they can do some of this pre-check, make sure that you're ready in the event that there was a breach, and take you through the steps that you would go through if there was a breach, like a tabletop exercise. Let's assume there was a breach. Act as if there was. How would you respond? How would your team respond? What would they do? And if not, do you have a team on standby that you could reach out to? So I actually like this statement. So the winners of AR won't be the organizations with the most advanced models. It's going to be the ones that know how to use it, know how to protect it, know how to make sure it's a differentiator. More and more, I see just about everybody advertises today that they're using AI. Not so sure that's a positive thing. It's just a buzzword now that everybody's looking for. So if you've got a good ROI for AI, you've got good goals and good reasons to use it, it can definitely be a differentiator. It can certainly make you more efficient. It can certainly drive your business. But to just have AI for the sake of having AI, I think there's a lot of businesses that are going to have a negative effect of that. And as I said, I'm seeing more and more of that on a daily basis. So those protections are critical. I think I've covered everything that I had. So this is some of the stuff that we can do to help. We're definitely not for everybody, but in the event that I can ever be of help for somebody, one of the things that's important for me to tell everybody is I consider myself an educator. I don't consider myself a salesman. So anytime a business wants to talk to me and just get an idea of where am I? What should I be doing? What am I required to do? I'm always happy to have those conversations with anybody. Where my office is in Stamford, Connecticut. We're my organization is national. We've got resources all across the country. I personally live in Connecticut, work in Connecticut, but we're a national business. If you went and looked on Gartner right now, Gartner peer review, we're actually listed as the #1 cybersecurity company in the country. I'm pretty proud of that because that's not something you could pay for. But once again, my point here was I'm always happy to talk to somebody if I can help out. I believe my contact information is right there on the bottom of the screen, but I'm sure you'll be provided that after the webinar also. And I think this goes back to Bud now.
Well, Vinny, thank you very much. Very informative. And as I'm sure you can imagine, there's a bunch of questions for you. So let me
Happy to
start.
take them.
You ready? Here
Yeah,
goes.
here you go.
Uh, how do you protect what is on your computer from AI? I use Copilot for searches of research, and I direct it to where I want it to search. But how would I know if it is taking info from my computer?
Great question. So there's a couple of things there. First of all, Copilot and most of the different models, Gemini, there's settings in there that will allow you to control where it goes, whether it's internal, external. You can set it for web only, internal only. So that would be #1. Secondly, if you're just talking about on your desktop, well, now it's going to depend on some of the types of solutions you have in place, some of the software you have in place. For example, if you had an enterprise class version of Microsoft Office, you'd have more control than if you had a lower version. So a lot of your softwares will have some control on that also. But here's what I would tell you to do. Do a test. Create a document. Set your environment up so that, let's say it's just internal. And do a test for specific information that you know is in your environment and see what it comes back with. So do your own kind of testing. See, and this way you can actually test to see what it's got access to. You can be very specific, right? So if you've got a file on your desktop that says, hey, my last vacation, and then you want to do a report on my last vacation, see what it comes back with. If it comes back with, something that's on your desktop when your controls are not right.
Okay, thank you. Very, very good idea. Next one. Please explain the differences between open and closed AI.
Another great question. So your open AI is basically those models that we've talked about, your Claude, your Copilot, your Gemini. Those are your open AI. Your closed is what you're going to see more and more organizations do, and that's building their own LLM. An LLM is basically what a Copilot is. More and more businesses, because the cost of AI is coming down, are building out their own models. And there's a number of reasons for that. AI in the future is going to become more and more expensive. So don't know if you've heard about tokenization, for example. Every time you use Claude, you use a token. And same thing with Copilot and Gemini. And in your subscription, you get so many. If you go over that usage, there's a cost associated to it. So these LLMs are creating a drug. They're getting you addicted to using the AI models. And in the future, that cost of tokenization is going to go through the roof. So it's going to cost you more and more money for it. But today, more and more businesses are going to a closed model because they can control it and secure it, right? So we've seen with Claude that it's made data available. It's been breached. And that's some of the concerns.
Thank you. Next one. You've mentioned this, so it's a quick refresher. I heard the first type of AI is generative. What's the second? And as a follow up, also, does patching mean keeping the software up to date?
So a couple of things. Second one on the patching, yes, patching means keeping the software up to date. But you should see if you're a Microsoft user, for example, you should get notifications if there's like a 0-day vulnerability that's been identified. The 0-day vulnerability is basically somebody has acknowledged that they found a vulnerability with the software, and they have to come up with a fix for it. Until there's that patch, it's a known vulnerability that threat actors are going to exploit. So when that patch comes out, it's important that you patch your software immediately. But to answer the question, it's yes, keeping it up to date with the latest patches. First part of that was the type.
AI generative, and what's the second type?
Second one was agentic. So agentic is more of an autonomous type of AI. It makes decisions. It brings in input, and it'll basically. We've just seen this recently. A farm out west had used agentic AI to plow crops in a certain way, to plow, to fertilize, to water. The program decided on it that it knew a better way of doing it, and it recreated the entire environment, which was a problem for a number of reasons. But agentic makes its own decisions. It learns.
Okay. This is an interesting one. I have a blog. Is there a clause, disclaimer, and/or section code that I can use to include in my blog or a footer stating that I do not want to give permission to use my blog for AI or AI model training?
There is, most of that should come from your lawyer. Um, that there definitely is. That's not my area to get into. We have that even on our websites and all that, but that comes from legal.
Okay. What certificates or trainings should a cybersecurity consultant have to assist with becoming compliant at the different levels of federal contracts?
So, federal, we get into a number of different things. So it really is the area too in federal. But I would tell you at a minimum, if you're paying somebody to help you with this, you're looking for a CISSP.
Okay.
There's a
Well,
million certifications out there, so we could be here forever. But if it was me, if it was my business, the one I'd be looking for.
CISSP.
Correct.
Okay, while I stumbled my way into the chat after being in Q&A, from my own point of view, I'm sure you saw the article last week about the rogue AIs that hacked into companies. And while I'm getting myself ready in the chats, would you care to address that concept or situation while I'm working away here?
Well, I mean, you're talking about rogue AI attacks. I mean, they're happening daily. So I'm not sure which specific one you're talking
The
about.
Times had a report last week. I believe it was Anthropic, the Anthropic AI had hacked into a number of companies without any direction, just sort of went rogue and did it on its own.
Yeah, I don't know how accurate that is. You know, there's a lot going back and forth on that. Did it happen on its own, or was that generated by a threat actor? I don't think they really know that yet, um, or I'm not sure that they will. But it goes back to my point. There's just more and more of this happening every day. Whether it's targeted by a threat actor or it's a version of agentic that went off on its own. Um, this is what you have to be prepared for. Expect it to happen. It's happening.
Okay, here we go. As a sole proprietor consultant who's new to AI, is it worth a made version of Claude? Is it more secure? Oh, paid version of Claude. Is it more secure than the free version?
Yes, absolutely. So the free version, it's basically the reason it's free is because they have access to your data, right? It's you're not controlling the data, even though there's been some concern about is the paid version as secure as they're coming off. That is to be seen. But yes, the free version, it's free because they have access to your data.
Okay. Segueing from that, what cyber protection recommendations do you have for a solopreneur that's just getting started? No income yet, so resources are limited. Can't really use infrastructure equipment other than home internet access and predominantly using free or very low budget tools.
So, we're talking about a single proprietary, probably working off of a laptop, right?
Yeah,
So,
probably.
yeah, I mean, this is not necessarily because of AI, just security in general. If you're working off a laptop, you should have encryption. Encryption on your laptop is very cheap. It's not expensive. If you're working I'm assuming based on that statement that you're not working out of an office, you're working at, at Starbucks or whatever. One of the easiest ways to get a breach is if you're working off a free internet connection. If you don't have to put a password in to get on that internet, I definitely would use it. Um, Thirdly, if I did not have to, I would not keep any sort of proprietary confidential information on that one device. Keep it on a second storage device that you can access only when you need it. Because otherwise, if your single device gets breached, you just lost everything.
Oh, thank you. Good ideas, good suggestions. Do you see the cost of token usage ever leveling out, like the early days of pay per minute cell phone usage are now being flat fee?
Yes, definitely. I don't know when that day is going to be. You're going to see a spike in cost before you see it level out. Um, but yeah, absolutely. It'll go the way of the cell phone, as you mentioned, the access. As more and more AI providers come on, they're going to want to make theirs cheaper and cheaper because they want everybody to use theirs. So absolutely.
Okay, next one here is a question from a team member of mine. What happens if someone cuts the AI functions in half and uses standard code to avoid excessive LLM calls? Any additional risk for my business? And from the questioner's perspective, it saves us tokens, but does it increase your risk?
Uh, you know, I couldn't swear to this, right? I probably need more of my engineers for that. But my initial thought is it really depends on that code that you're integrating into the AI code. How secure is that? Um, my initial thought is that could go either way. How confident are you with the code that you're splicing in? I'm not sure I've got a great answer for that one.
Okay. Is there software we can purchase to protect our information from AI hacks? I'm a new business startup and still using my personal laptop. I am planning to obtain work only tabletop and laptop, but have not obtained as yet. I do backup on an external hard drive. What other recommendations can you give?
Yeah, so there's actually a number of software. They pop up almost every day now. For small businesses, one of the that I recommend is called Coro. It's a bit of an all-inclusive security program, very reasonable, and it gives you a lot of what a small business would need, and it's very affordable. But there's 100 of them out there now. Some are more specific to whether it's malware or ransomware, but there are some that'll try to be all inclusive. Um, I would start with something like look into a Coro.
Okay. Um, Terrific. Oh, here, quick piece of information here. Techpresso,
No, no, it's just so you guys know, it's Coro.
okay. Techpresso is a great digital newsletter. Where'd that go? I was just reading that. Oh, there we are. Great newsletter that is free to subscribe to and provides the latest information on all things AI. Highly recommended if you want to stay informed. That was Techpresso, Techpresso. And other than that, I think we have run through um, our list of questions. So thank you, Vinny.
I would
That
also
was
just to tell your listeners, we do a lot of free webinars. If anybody's ever interested, looking into specific security for AI, for laptops, for whatever. If you just follow us on LinkedIn or whatever, they're for all free webinars. If you're ever interested, you can learn a lot from them.
very good. And LinkedIn would be the place to find whatever you're recommending.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's the easiest place.
great. Okay, so As a reminder, a recording of this webinar and any materials will be available within a couple of days on the westernconnecticut.score.org website. Please check our website for information on upcoming webinars. And again, that's westernconnecticut.score.org. Again, SCORE offers free individual counseling, so please use the link on the screen or visit our website and click Request a Mentor. We are available for sessions in pretty much any which way you want to try to get to us. Also, please fill out your evaluations that will be sent at the end of the webinar. Next page. On behalf of SCORE, I'd like to thank you all for attending today's SCORE Live webinar. And in closing, a big thank you, Vinny, for presenting today. Thank you all for listening and have a nice day.
Thank you all.